you mentioned Brandon Sanderson, and you can't see my shelf here. I have a shelf of books, and I have all of his Stormlight Archive books, all of the 4 Stormlight Archive books. 3 of them are signed because he was here in 2019. And I've waited in line 5 hours to get them signed.
I would have done the same.
Yeah.
I would have done the same.
Yes, finally, someone who appreciates the pain. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Oren and today I am interviewing Anna and Luke Kimbrough from Misty Mountain Legends. They are that D&D couple from TikTok. They're so fun to talk to and I hope you enjoy this interview. Before we jump into the interview, I would appreciate it if you checked out my Patreon. It's patreon.com/the Oren Cohen. And without further ado, enjoy the interview. So, Luke and Anna Kimbrough, how are you doing today? Thank you for being here.
We're excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're doing great. Hope you're doing well as well.
I'm great. I just had a nice weekend, and it's a treat to finish the weekend by talking to you. I've been waiting for this interview a long time. I'm so excited to talk to you, and I want to ask you the first question that I have for you is, who were Luke and Anna before you started your creative journey? You started, I'm assuming, like many of us, you started creating content during the pandemic. But tell me about who you were before that.
Oh, man. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'm trying. Well, who was I? I feel like I need a moment to think about this. I can't even. It's like hard to remember. What was I doing before COVID? What was my life like?
I mean, you were doing that 9 to 5 grind.
Yeah,
Often more than 9 to 5.
Yeah. I guess I'll start with, I was a creative writing major in college. So I have a background in writing, communications, marketing, and I went straight out of college into a career job that sucked out my soul. And that's what I was doing before COVID, and before we started creating content. We were playing D&D. Yes. I feel like we were pretty much the same people minus Pinto.
Yes.
Who's sleeping. Hi. We didn't have her yet. She didn't come until after, but I think we were pretty much the same people, just not on the internet.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah. I was in college before. I've been pursuing eventually getting my 4-year degree and a bachelor's degree. And because of the pandemic, I dropped out of college altogether and was able to kind of put more time into making content with Anna and doing a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, I don't think we've changed too much aside from your level of confidence has certainly increased since you started doing content creation.
I think that my weirdness got validated, my friends who I knew in person before I made friends on the internet didn't have the same interest as me. As my best friend is an English major. She really enjoys books, and she's now into D&D. But before all of that, we had things in common, but I was definitely the nerdy one of my friend group, I think. And then I feel like maybe I've persuaded some of them to be a little bit more nerdy now.
I would say so.
But my weirdness got validated by the internet.
That's so cool. I love that. You mentioned you were into D&D before you started creating content. And I'm so interested, what has drawn you to D&D, originally?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I could probably start with that because I have been a big gamer nerd for basically my whole life. I was playing video games when I was a little kid, when my parents would let me, even if they were like educational video games. I've grown up playing a variety of different video games and board games. And when I heard about Dungeons and Dragons, I was like, that's a whole nother level of nerdom that maybe one day, but I'm not there yet. And it wasn't until I made a friend in college who he had grown up playing D&D, and we just happened to start talking about our interests. And he's like, yeah, I mean, like, I play D&D, and if you ever want to play, just let me know. And I was like, sure. And so I checked out the player's handbook from the college library because they happened to have it. And I read it for a bit, and it was like a month later, he tore his ACL, so he had a lot more free time, and he invited us to come play in a campaign that he had written. And so that was over 5 years ago now, right?
That was, the summer of 2017.
Yeah.
So 5 years ago. Yeah. And that was like, I had heard of Dungeons and Dragons, but I really didn't know what it was beyond that it involved like fantasy. Like I really didn't know how to play the game. I didn't know what type of game it was. And it was my first introduction to a role-playing game. Definitely had played a lot of board games, video games, etc., but I had never played a role-playing game before. And I remember making my first character sitting in this guy's living room, and be looking at the sheet and going, what in the, like, there's so much stuff. And I was like, I remember being like, you mean like I can be whatever I want? Like I can do whatever I want? And he's like, well, not whatever you want, but kinda. And that level of freedom to be creative and imaginative, I think that's my favorite part of the game is the role-playing aspect where you get to be somebody that you get to be something that you can never be in real life. And you get to do it with other people and kind of go on this, you do go on adventures together. And just that, like, the level of imagination, it reminded me of being like a little kid again and being in my parents' backyard, and I like had a plastic sword and, fighting these imaginary monsters or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, I just love being able to do that with other people, and build this world together and tell a story too.
That's amazing. I love that your introduction to D&D was such an extension of who you describe yourselves to be as like nerds who like video games, and I love that. That's an amazing answer. Now, why Misty Mountain Legends?
So we came up with the name for two reasons. A, we live in the mountains, and they're very foggy a lot of the time. So it was kind of location-based, but also because The Lord of the Rings is very influential for both of us growing up, and then also for our relationship.
To give you an idea, she walked down the aisle to Into the West.
Yeah.
At our wedding.
Which is from the movie. The Hobbit was the first ever chapter book that I read. And my family was very obsessed with Lord of the Rings, all things Tolkien. And I remember listening to the audiobook of Lord of the Rings. I probably wasn't old enough to even read. And I was listening to this story and I had it memorized. I mean, not word for word, but I had the plot memorized by the time I was like 7. And I remember reading the books. I think I was 9. And yeah, just like it was a huge influence on my love for fantasy. And I think my love for fantasy started with Lord of the Rings. So it felt right to include that somehow because the Misty Mountains are in The Hobbit.
Yeah.
So.
And then we also wanted to we were trying to come up with this is a place where we want to tell stories, and we were like, all right, well, what's just another term for legends.
Yeah.
And so we were like, yeah, we want this to be a bunch of just shared stories that we can have with other people and then share with the community. And so thus Misty Mountain Legends was born.
Amazing. Okay. So what was the pivotal moment when you decide we're going to do this, we're going to start a TikTok?
So funny enough, our sister, your brother's wife, so sister-in-law, she downloaded TikTok first. Well, I don't know why I don't know what sparked her to download it other than it was COVID and everybody was in lockdown and it was gaining traction as an app. And she downloaded it and was like, hey, it would be really cool to like make some videos together to just pass the time. And so we spent an afternoon with his family making random little silly TikToks. And some of them were like trending sounds. Like it was not nerdy based whatsoever. It was just like fun stuff to do together. And I like pushed back against downloading the app for a while because I was like, I don't know. I'm not really big into social media, like posting. Doesn't really seem like I don't like to put my face out there that much. Doesn't seem like my thing, but if we're doing it together, then sure. And so the two of us were like, oh, okay, it's not that bad. It's not that weird. So we made a few more just like little random videos. And one of them happened to be, we were listening to The Adventure Zone by the McElroy family. And I remember driving into the driveway, the podcast is playing, and we like parked the car, and I had the thought, I was like, what if D&D was real life? Like, what if we had to roll for things in real life? And that sparked the idea for this video where he like made me roll for certain things. Wow. And it blew up. And I remember sitting on the couch and seeing my phone notifications come up, and I'm like, that's what people are commenting, people are seeing this. And I think within 24 hours, it had 1 million views, and I gained like 30,000 followers. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Did not intend for that to happen. I didn't think anybody would see it. And that's kind of how we found the D&D community. We did not really even know that people were talking about D&D on TikTok until that video blew up, and I was like, oh, they're already here. And we felt like, these are our people. There's other nerds out there. So we continued to do that, and it just evolved from there.
I was so obsessed with your earlier videos. Like, I'm obsessed with all of your videos, but when I remember like discovering you on the app, and by the way, I am in Israel, so your TikToks are worldwide. They're not just in the United States. So I remember like, oh my God, I need this every day. Like this. And also there's another creator, One Shot Questers. He also creates lots of funny TikToks. So that was amazing. I love that. And also, I just realized while you were talking that I have this here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Wow. This is my favorite cup. Not sponsored. But I remember when you started your store, your Etsy store, I remember buying this, and this cup has been on my table for like every day since, and I love it.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a fun one here. Aside from D&D TikTok, you're also in Book Talk. So can you give me some inspirations for books or shows that inspire you as content creators?
So, oof. This is really hard because there's so many books that I love that it's really hard to be like, these are the top 5 or top 10. But recently, I feel like I have kind of gotten into a Brandon Sanderson.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Like
Hell
yes. I have not read all of his works yet, but there's not been anything that I have read of his that I did not love. It's not, I feel like I love his writing because the world that he creates is so immersive, and you just feel like you're there experiencing it. But he also has these great characters that are emotionally deep, and the way that he grows them through the horrible things that he puts them through. I just love the emotional depth along with all of this action and world building and just crazy stuff, and his endings are insane.
Wow.
Every time I get to like the last 100 pages of a book, I'm like, okay, here we go. It's about to like go down. And he just, the way that he pulls things together in his narrative, that he's mentioned things that kind of foreshadow at the ending. But the way it all comes together and you're like, this makes so much sense. And I didn't know that that was what you were going to do with this, but it's perfect. It's just, he's an excellent writer in my opinion. So that has been a recent, I don't know if inspiration is the right word, but like definitely somebody that I would recommend to anyone who likes fantasy. And I don't know about shows because I read more than I watch. And when I watch shows, I actually usually watch sci-fi. That's like the genre that I probably watch the most. Yeah. And I feel like that doesn't influence my content creation as much because I really don't think we touch on sci-fi. But I really like The Expanse, which is a book series that I have and I need to read. But The Expanse is my favorite TV show.
Okay. And you, Luke, want to add something?
The problem is, I am not as big a reader. I used to be. When I was in high school, like, I would read books a ton. I would read all the time, and I would breeze through books so fast. But I have read a whole book to completion, one whole book to completion with it between last year and this year. Not including, like, D&D books or, like, tabletop RPG books and stuff like that.
Those are educational.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, like, yes, it's a book, but it's more informal information. It's not just like a leisurely read. If anything, man, I also don't watch a ton of shows unless I'm watching them with Anna. And so
maybe podcasts is better inspiration for us.
Yes.
The Adventure Zone and Dungeons and Daddies are the two podcasts that we've listened to the most, I feel like, as far as D&D podcasts. And those have definitely, I wouldn't say we've taken ideas from them, but they've inspired us to be like, hey, other people are doing this. It's really fun to listen to. Maybe other people would want to listen to us do the same thing.
Yeah.
So
I will say, I do think a lot of the video games I've been playing have influenced some of my content creation.
Okay.
So especially with some campaigns, just getting ideas for things. I've been replaying Shadow of War, which takes place in the Lord of the Rings universe in Middle Earth, and that one I've been messing around with ideas that have been inspired by that a lot. So,
okay. I want to talk about ideas a bit more, but I do want to mention something. You mentioned Brandon Sanderson, and you can't see my shelf here. I have a shelf of books, and I have all of his Stormlight Archive books, all of the 4 Stormlight Archive books. 3 of them are signed because he was here in 2019. And I've waited in line 5 hours to get them signed.
I would have done the same.
Yeah.
I would have done the same.
Yes. Finally, someone who appreciates the pain. Okay, so going back to like ideas and all that, I have like two questions about that. The first one is more about challenges. Like at the beginning, you had that video that you mentioned, blow up and stuff. But as we all know, social media isn't easy. So like what challenges have you faced in the beginning when you wanted to make sure that this is going to be a thing?
Well, I will say at the beginning, it wasn't we didn't think, oh, we're going to do this long term. It kind of was like, oh, people like this. We'll just keep doing it for fun. And we really didn't have it when it first started out. I would say for like the first 3 to 4 months that we were creating content, we really didn't expect it to go anywhere as far as like, oh, I don't know. It just felt like this is a fun thing to do in our free time, and it's not going to be anything that leads anywhere as far as like making money or making a career out of it or anything like that. It was just to have fun. And it did eventually lead into other things, but when we first started out, we didn't start out to grow a platform or anything like that. It just happened naturally. And I don't really know when that switch happened where we're like, oh, we could do more with this.
I think I can pinpoint when that switch was.
Okay.
It was the switch when we decided to branch out from TikTok.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
It was when we were like, we should start live streaming. That was the next step, is we migrated to Twitch as well. And we were like, all right, we want to start a campaign. We want to start live streaming, throw in one-shots, all that. And I think that is when the switch happened, that we were like, okay, we're building a brand. We are creating our personal brand and how people are going to view us and what we're going to be advertising hopefully someday in the future. At least that's where my brain went with it. And so when that happened is when we started figuring, okay, we need to make sure we're presenting ourselves like the way we want to represent who we are, what we stand for, even though we're, just wanting to provide entertainment and a way for people to kind of get away from just the troubles of life. You just want to give a nice reprieve and entertain. We also wanted to make sure we're presenting ourselves the way we want other people to see us. And so that was, I think, was the biggest challenge of like, okay, this is how we're going to move forward. And yeah.
Okay. Before we move away from TikTok and talk about expanding into other platforms, which I do want to ask you too, walk me through what was your process for generating ideas for TikToks? Like, do you sit around and make scenarios, or how did it work out?
Oof, it's hard because honestly, we don't have like brainstorming time. We don't have like, oh, we need to sit down and come up with 5 ideas that we're going to turn into videos. We've done that occasionally. Usually if we do that, it's like we're about to go on vacation and I know I'm not going to have time to create. So we pre-record things to post while we're gone but honestly, it's just like, oh, I did this thing and it was funny. Let's just do it again and dramatize it for a video. Or with Pinto, she kind of took over a little bit and
Yes.
people really want to see her sword fight. So a lot of it is like, okay, is she in the mood to do that today? And if she is, let's just give her a sword and see what happens. And a lot of it is just like, oh, this idea pops in my head based off of a conversation we were having, or maybe we played a game and it sparked an idea, or I was reading a book, or
she comes walking out of the bedroom while I'm here and she's like, I have a really stupid idea for a video. Past 2 videos we've done, that is how it's been introduced to me. I have a really stupid idea for a video. That's
always so good.
It's always hilarious video ideas. Really, Anna is the brains behind the videos and everything. I come up with a few, but not too many.
Usually it's like I have an idea and you help me get it down to like what it actually becomes. Give me feedback on what if we did it this way instead, or so it is a collaborative effort. And a lot of times we'll have an idea, film it, and be like, that did not work. That was not what we that just didn't, it wasn't the way we wanted it to turn out. And so we try a couple different ways. But most of the time, I would say that we give it 5 or 6 goes, and if it doesn't work the way we want it to go, then we move on.
Yeah, I'd say that's right.
Okay, that's so cool. It's your process is drafting and then editing, which is also a good segue to talking about your writing, which I know you're writing a book. Before we talk about that, you mentioned Pinto, and we can't not mention Pinto in this interview. So, Pinto took over, as you said, your content in many ways. But there was one thing that I'm really curious about is how did you teach Pinto to use a sword like that?
Well, the kind of scary thing is we didn't. We didn't teach her. She is very smart. And she watched us because we were creating videos with our sword fighting and very poorly sword fighting. So there was a day where we went out to a field nearby and we were filming, I think it was a video for your TikTok account.
I think we filmed one for you and one for me.
And we had our swords, and in this field there happened to be a really large stick that was relatively the same size as one of our swords. And she's watching us, and she picks up her stick, and she's like, oh, look, I have one too. And she's running after us with her stick, and we're trying to hit the stick with the sword, kind of pretending to fight her off. And she was so into it, doing her happy little growls and being all ferocious but playful. And there was a moment where she gets my leg with the stick, and I was like, oh no, I've been slain. And I fall down and I drop the sword that I was holding. And she immediately, without missing a beat, drops her stick, picks up my sword, and starts running around my dead body. I won and I've looted you. And that was her sword from then on. That, she claimed it, and
she's torn that one up.
Yeah, that one is
just from all the swinging.
It's very beaten up now, and we've gotten her a replacement. But that was kind of the moment where she showed us that she knew how to do this, and that she really enjoyed doing it. And so we've never gave her pointers or hey, try to train her how to do this. She just learned how to do it herself by watching us. We did, when she was a puppy, we trained her to leave it or pick up things. So she knows how, if we were stop, leave it, she would drop her sword. And she's just so good at reading cues, that she knows that if we hand her sword, but we don't start action yet, she waits until we're all in place, and then she'll wait for somebody else to make the first move or give her a look. All you have to do is give her a nod, and she's like, yes, let's go.
Yeah.
So she's just really smart.
She is.
Which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
My dog might be smarter than me.
She works with reactions.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. I have a question for Luke. So one of my patrons asked me, shared first that you posted a TikTok on your channel that you expressed your desire to create stories in space. and they want to know how your opinion has shifted now that Spelljammer is a thing.
So it's kind of funny. I have ordered Spelljammer. I don't have it yet, but I have ordered like the set because there was a sale, and so it'll be coming by the end of the month. And my view is not really changed, but it's because I have already. So for the podcast, we're recording episodes now for like season 2, and we have a D&D campaign that's part of it, but we also have a campaign that's using a totally different system. It's using a system that was created by the Kids on Bikes TTRPG, but it's teens in space. And so it is a purely sci-fi setting with the rules to match, but using totally different rules for everything. And it has been one of the most fun campaigns I've ever run. And I've so enjoyed being in space because I love fantasy, but I've always felt like sci-fi has never been done the way I really like it. Because I don't like The Expanse because it's too political. There's too much, like, I guess, realism, like they try to follow the science. I don't want the science to make sense. I don't need that to make sense. I want it to just be lasers, like Star Wars. Star Wars feels like very good sci-fi. Star Trek has felt like very good sci-fi. The latest, the Lightyear movie that Disney made felt like very good sci-fi. And it's all just not political. It's not gritty. I want it to feel like science is magic and that kind of thing.
So I think what you're trying to say is that you don't like science fiction because you don't like the realism of science.
Yes.
What you want is space fantasy.
Yes.
You want space fantasy, not science fiction.
Yes.
That's...
But space fantasy that's like also still has the sciencey advancements like lasers and whatnot. So Space Jammer I'm excited about. It is still more fantasy, but it doesn't feel like sci-fi to me, if that makes sense. It feels just like fantasy D&D, but space.
Yeah. I think like Star Wars is also a good example for that, which you mentioned. So, yeah, that's cool. And for Anna, you're writing a book. Mm-hmm. I will share a secret that I'm also writing a book. But nice. mine is very, very far off. So I am curious about like your process and inspirations and like how like I think my biggest problem has always been like putting my writing into my schedule because I'm also working a full-time job currently. So how has writing a book integrated into your life?
Okay, so I have dreamed of publishing a book, writing a book, finishing it, and publishing it since I was 8 years old. Since I realized that was a thing people could do, like that was how books came into existence. I wrote my first story, I think I was 7, maybe 8, around that age when I wrote my first little fiction story. And I've been writing ever since. So this has been a long time coming because I'm now 27. So it's been a long, long process to get to where I am today. And I did go to school for creative writing. That was my major in college. And I did have hopes of writing right out of college, like, aspirations of publishing a book, but I needed to find a job that was going to support us. We got engaged like a couple of weeks before I graduated, and I knew that just financially I needed to have a job that was going to be more stable income. So I got a job, and I did not have the time or mental capacity to focus on my writing for 5 years. I wanted to, and I thought about it on a very almost daily basis of like, I really want to do this. I had ideas that were just like stewing at the back of my head. And occasionally I would start something and inevitably I would just be so drained from my job that I would work on it for like a week or two, and then I just couldn't keep up with it because I was so exhausted mentally, if not physically. So at the start of 2022, still had not gotten anywhere close to even like, I think the furthest I got into something was like 16,000 words, which is not a small amount of words, but it was not enough by far to be anything that was going to be completed anytime soon with the pace I was going at. So I started 2022 this year telling myself, this is the year I do it. If I don't do it this year, I need to stop thinking about it and like being hard on myself, because I was really hard on myself. Like, you're keeping yourself from completing a dream because you just don't put enough time and effort into it. I was really emotionally hard on myself for not doing it.
I feel you.
So 2022, I was like, this is it. I'm either going to do it or I'm not. I'm going to say it's not going to happen in this point in my life. And then I got laid off in May. And that day was a major turning point, for our entire lives, because we had based our plan for our future off of like that job. We were going to move several states away. So we'd been saving up for this move, and several things. It's just crazy how it happened where like, we decided in January that we were going to move several states away for this job. And at the time, I had a medical issue that I ended up in the emergency room. I didn't have the best insurance, and it was a lot of money. And we were like, okay, great. Now it's going to be a lot harder to move because financially we need to save more. So I was like, okay, we'll wait until August. We'll save as much as we can and we'll move around August. So we were saving as much as we could for the next couple of months. May happens, and halfway through the month, I get the call, hey, we can't afford to pay you anymore. So we're gonna have to let you go. And I remember like getting off of that call and just sitting there. And I also had COVID. I was in the midst of being very sick from COVID when this happened. And I think that helped a little bit, because the immediate feeling I had was relief, oh, thank God I don't have to try to work while I have a fever and I'm like coughing up a lung. And I remember we went on a drive that afternoon and just kind of processed what was happening, because we were like, well, what do we do now? Like, what is our plan to move and be away from our family and friends is changing. I don't know what my career is going to look like now. What do we do? And in that day, I was like, this is it. This is my opportunity. We have this money that we had set aside for a big move that is now not going to happen. So I'm going to write my book, and I'm going to take the summer and I'm going to write this book, because I said I was going to do it this year or I wasn't going to do it at all. So I'm going to do it. So that is how this kind of like jump started, me actually putting something together to completion. And I don't think that if I had not lost my job that I would have been able to do this. Financially, it's a little bit stressful, because now we were a 2-income household, and now we're just off of his income and whatever we make on the side from content creation. So that's always stressful when you're like, wow, we're just eating through our savings now. But it has been the best thing that could have happened, I think, for me personally, like, to be able to do something that I have dreamed of doing for so long. So that being said, I don't have to balance a 9-to-5 right now with writing, and I know I'm very privileged in having that capability. And I'm very thankful that he is working Pinto is working. She's emotional support. So that being said, I spend my days writing. And that's really how I've been able to pump it out is I get up, I write, I eat lunch, I write, I take a shower, I write some more. And that's literally the only way that I've been able to do this is having so much time to dedicate to it, and also kind of putting this on myself of like, I need to do it or give up on it, and I didn't want to give up on it. So, that's kind of, I don't remember what the rest of the question was, but
No, you answered the question perfectly. You're good. That's amazing. That sounds so, like, aside from fun, also inspirational. Like waking up and writing, and like, I think also in terms of like what you describe about making that decision because of being laid off, I think sometimes some things happen to us in life which we perceive as bad, but they actually allow us to advance to our truer self. And I think that your place is in writing. If you also have so many like fantasy books, and you're so immersed in this world, and I just can't wait to read what you write. But I also like want to ask if there are any plans to like integrate your work in progress into your like content creation. Like, I know you have a Patreon, and I did see on the Patreon that you plan to do something with the work in progress that you do. But are there like other bigger plans for your book even before it's ready? And also, side note, links in the description to Anna and Luke's Patreon. Thank you.
Yeah, so the plan right now is focusing on getting it finished. I currently moved on to I'm draft 3. I'm in the editing process. I haven't written the last, like, I would say last like fifth of the book, simply because I got that far and I was like, okay, before I write this ending and put all this effort into putting it on the page, I feel like I need to go back and fix all my plot issues that lead up to this ending so that I'm not editing quite so much. So I'm now going back through and editing what I've already written, which is really exciting to be at that point. As far as like content creation based off of the book, I don't have tons of plans for that, just because I don't know what it's going to be yet. Like, I'm still very much in the editing and figuring out what needs to stay in the story, what needs to go, what I need to add in for it to make sense. And I don't want to like present my story and then it ends up being something else when I'm ready to share it with the world. And people are like, oh, I thought you were doing this and now it's this, and that's not what I wanted. So I want to be transparent about what it is and also like that it's going to change. So I feel like I want to have a better understanding of what the story is as a whole before I talk too much about it on the internet. But I do have hopes of publishing. My current plan is to finish and then give myself, I think I'm going to give myself about 6 months to find an agent and try to traditionally publish. That has always just been a dream of mine, to be traditionally published, to have my book in Barnes and Noble and or any other large book, like to be able to go out in the world and see my book on a bookshelf somewhere.
Oh my God.
I think that like baby me, like the 7-year-old me that had this dream, like I want to do it for that version of myself. And I'm also okay, like if it doesn't happen, if I don't get an agent, and I'm like, I feel like there is enough people who have voiced interest in this book that self-publishing would also be a fine, like there's nothing, like people have been incredibly successful in that, and I would be happy to do it that way. The only hesitation for me with self-publishing is the upfront cost of having to pay for editing and pay for design and pay to, like, there's a lot of cost that you don't have to take on if you're able to do traditional. So that's kind of my hesitation with self-publishing, is just, can we afford to do that? Especially if it doesn't end up doing super well. That's a lot of money that we don't get back. So that's kind of where I'm at, is like hopefully going traditionally published, but I will be very happy to self-publish if that doesn't happen. So when I have it ready, like I have it finished and I'm happy with it, I will definitely be talking about it.
Yeah.
But I feel like I gotta get the story down first, and figure out what is the heart of the story.
Yeah. I also would say, if you do end up going the self-publishing route, you don't have to upfront the cost, because I think there's enough community to merit a Kickstarter or something like that.
That is true. Yeah.
So think about that. Okay. So I want to bring us back to a little bit about the content creation, because I also want to ask you for some advice for beginner creators. So before that, let me ask you this. When was the moment when you figured out that your audience, the audience that you built on TikTok, could actually serve as leverage for expanding to other platforms like Instagram and YouTube and all that?
Well, I feel like we moved out of TikTok and into other platforms because there was this fear that TikTok was going to get taken down. Because it feels like a lifetime ago. So I'm having a hard time remembering the exact details, but I remember that there was talk of the app was going to be taken out of the US. Like you weren't going to be able to use it because of, I think there was concern over privacy, and it was this whole it was a political thing in my memory. So there was fear that, we could lose this platform, so we need to get somewhere else, get onto Twitter or Instagram or Twitch or wherever, so that the people who do enjoy our content can find us if TikTok ceases to exist. Yeah. So that kind of was the inciting action to make us branch out. But then we also had a Twitch stream, which was celebrating when we reached 100,000 followers on TikTok. We randomly selected, we had people submit that they wanted to participate, and we randomly selected five people, and it was completely random. Just used a random number generator to select these people. And we did a D&D one shot on Twitch, and it was very successful, and we had a really good time with them. And we're like, what if we just kept going? What if we just kept playing? And that is the live stream that we do every month, and we have now been doing for over 2 years.
Yes. We did lose one of the players. One of the players who was in the one shot could not commit to sticking around. So right now we're just down to 4 of the original 5 that joined us for that one shot, but we love them. They're great. And it's even gotten to the point where from that story, another live stream has come up because one of the players, their character separated accidentally from the rest of the party. And so I wanted to follow this other storyline of this character going along. And now we have guest stars who are playing. And I've run multiple other one-shots. When I reached, I forget what milestone, but I hosted for my channel a one shot where I randomly selected people as well for a one shot on Twitch as well. And we've just done a lot with expanding there, and we've got over 2,000 followers on Twitch now.
It has been like a natural progression based off of our interests, if that makes sense. It wasn't like,
Yes.
How can we monetize this? It was, we enjoy doing this. How else can we do it? And who else can we involve? And it's been more of like, this is something we really enjoy doing. How can we do more of it? And not how can we make money off of it? Though we do make a little bit, but it's not by far like a main source of income. But it's all been about like having a good time and sharing like this D&D and like the stories that we create through D&D.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so like I'm so interested in like you have your Twitch stream and TikTok and Instagram, and also you have a podcast which I'm listening to while I'm writing code, and like how do you manage like all of these venues? Like how do you not like make sure that you not overspread yourself, if that makes sense?
Well, I will say for me, since I kind of have been the runner for the Twitch and the podcast, I've been basically taking care of those primarily. My personal TikTok channel has suffered for it. I have not posted there in a while. I think over a week and a half or so. And so that has been... I've had to make sacrifices, and I think we both have had to make sacrifices to not spread ourselves too thin, to burn out from content creation. And I still want to post on TikTok. I've got like a bunch of ideas. It's just
time. Yeah. I think we've had to decide what is our priority, like what do we enjoy doing the most, and that's what we're going to prioritize and give the most of our attention to. And for him, I think that's the podcast and Twitch. Mm-hmm. And honestly, for me right now, it's writing. So we were at a point when we first started out where we were posting every day. Yeah. And sometimes multiple times a day, but consistently posting every day. And I think that lasted for probably close to a year, maybe a little over a year. And then we kind of realized, okay, we don't have to, it's not necessary. We're not going to lose our following if we don't post every single day. And so now it's more sporadic. And it's just been, it's like, you have to find a balance of like time and mental energy that it requires. And, just finding that balance has been a little bit difficult at times, where it's something that we've always enjoyed doing, and I think we will continue to enjoy doing it. But you can get burned out and be like, man, I just don't have any ideas, and I just don't have the energy to do that right now. Yeah. But you have been as consistently as you can with different schedules, recording for the podcast. And we've been trying to post somewhat consistently on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah. And it's actually...
There's not like a secret... I don't think there's a secret science to it. It's just whatever works for you. Yeah. And that is like... It's the most important thing is taking care of yourself, and making sure that you are mentally rested, emotionally well, and all of those things, because that's when you're going to put out your best content. Yeah. And if you're running off of no energy, and it just, not that you can't create good content when you're in that, you can. But I feel like it's going to mean the most to you when you have time to relax outside of it too.
Awesome. So my next question is, if you had to start everything from zero today, what would be things that you would change, and what did you learn from your journey so far?
I think if I had to start over from zero, I would say I would be reaching out to other creators earlier on. I think that was one thing we neglected to do when we were growing was, hey, like collaborating with other creators and reaching out just to engage and like be more personally a part of the community of creators that is on TikTok and all these other places. Because it was only last year, like late last year, that I actually started hanging out with other creators over Discord and stuff like that and doing collaborations. Like I recently did one with Dyson Autism, who's on TikTok, who creates awesome content about D&D and tells really sad stories and makes you cry. He puts out great stuff. But he reached out, I was like, hey, I saw this idea of like all these creators like having a fight where it was like a jump cut where they would get punched and then they'd hit back, and recently did that collaboration with a few other creators, and that was super fun. I was really glad to be a part of that. But it's taken 2 years basically to get to that point.
Well, I want to clarify. It's not because we were like, oh, we don't want to talk to other people and we don't want to collaborate. Like, it was not that's. No. I want to clarify. That's not what it was at all. I think I had this mentality that because I'm an introvert and I was never like the popular kid, or like
Same.
I just kind of thought that nobody knew we existed. Like, you know, like we did have this following, but in my head, we're still not famous. Like we're just people who post weird things on the internet. And in my head, I was like, they wouldn't want to do anything with us because we're so small. Like, who would want to? And I don't think that's true, but it's really hard to acknowledge that for me and be like, yeah, we do have a large following, and that's really hard for me to like mentally wrap my head around.
Yeah.
And so I've always had this like, it's almost like I view us as like we have like 100 followers when we really don't. So, like,
yeah, it's the imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
is
the
best way to put it. Is we didn't feel like we felt like they would just
like
turn
they
us
were
down.
the cool kids.
Yeah,
and we could never be the cool kids, so
Yeah.
we were just like, we'll just watch the sideline. But we are on the subject of collaboration. We are going to be doing a huge event. Well, I say huge. I don't know how big it's actually going to be. It's called the Convergence, and it's going to be at Evermore Park in Utah. And if you know Quincy's Tavern, basically
Yes.
they're bringing his tavern into the park, and you'll be able to go visit his tavern and play D&D with all of these other creators. So like One Shot Questers, you mentioned earlier, he's going to be there. Arcane Anthems,
Dice Cream Sandwich,
Critical Dice,
Cadiosaurus
will be there. There's a long list, and I'm sure I'm definitely leaving people out, but there's going to be a lot of creators who are from the D&D community there, and not all of them are from TikTok. A lot of them are like Twitch or have worked in the Dungeons and Dragons community, like done books or things like that. So we're really excited to be a part of that and actually get to meet these people face to face and like actually be like, you're real, you know, get to talk to them, and yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, we talked about your past, your inspirations, your growth. Now I have a question about the future. What is in the future for Misty Mountain Legends?
I do think we're hoping to make content creation, writing books, Twitch, podcasts. We're hoping to make that the full-time career and maybe branch out as far as like having other people use Misty Mountain Legends as a place to tell their stories, where we're just kind of the hosting of it, and maybe start other things and start at least being a part in the more physical space of this hobby and this community?
I would say the first goal is to be able to go to more conventions and be more present physically at these events. And the convergence, which I just talked about, that's the only thing that we have yet to be involved with. And part of that has just been like, we were both working, he was in school, and financially, and COVID, just all of these things. So we have hopes that now that we'll have more time for that. And so that is a goal. And I also think that for me personally, I really would like for writing to be my full-time gig. And then content creation will probably be a side thing, but will definitely be a big part of promoting my book and talking about books in general, but also D&D, because that's just so much of what, like, it's just a natural, like, what is the word I'm looking for?
Progression?
Yeah, progression, but also just, like, it's who we are. And I don't think we have any, like, we want to be at this number by this date, or we want to, like, maybe we should, but we don't. So we're just kind of seeing what works and still figuring out, like, how to prioritize what we enjoy. And yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. I am excited for your future. Before we wrap this up, I do want to do a little rapid fire recommendations. Luke, you will either give me board games or video games recommendations, and Anna, you will give me book recommendations or sci-fi recommendations. And they don't have to be like the best or something. They have to be like just whatever, recent maybe.
Okay. So, recommendations as far as video games. Shadow of War, it's a great one. It came out a few years ago. That's a great one. I cannot suggest Teens in Space enough. Like, if you want much more sci-fi than Spelljammer is going to be, Teens in Space is a great place to jump off. And it's very simple rulebook, very simple setting, and they provide a lot of freedom. You can play as a sentient cloud person. You can play as a physical, like a body of water. Like, it's just there's just so much freedom, because like if D&D, it's like you're primarily humanoids, but like with this, it's like you can be a lot, and it's great. So highly suggest that. I've just been branching out from D&D and into other RPGs so much. Like, there's one called Paranoia. It's like a box set, and it comes with cards and all these other things. Hard to do online, but great for in-person groups. It's funny, quirky, comedy-based, and yes, those are just things I suggest.
Okay. Anything by Brandon Sanderson. Obviously, after I've talked about him, I need to say that. Also, anything by V.E. Schwab. Her Darker Shades of Magic trilogy is one of my favorite trilogies. Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I could give book recommendations all day long. Wool by Hugh Howey is the best dystopian I have ever read. Anything by N.K. Jemisin, also amazing. She's won a ton of awards. Man, I could
Yeah, okay, so amazing. Okay, we'll cut it off there. It's fine. I think we have reached the end of our little interview. It was amazing to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was great.
Okay, before I let you go, where can people find you online? Where do you want to send them after they watch this interview?
Ooh, okay. I guess Misty Mountain Legends is on Instagram. That's our podcast, which you can find on pretty much any podcast provider. That's our YouTube. Twitter. And then on TikTok, I am banana_K, and you are
tumid_links.
Yeah.
Yes.
We created those accounts before Misty Mountain Legends was a thing, so.
Yes.